Inflation is eating your paycheck. We all feel it. Prices keep rising, but have you ever wondered who's really pulling the strings? What's behind the rising costs at the grocery store and the gas pump? Today, we're diving into the powerful institution at the heart of the U.S. economy, the Federal Reserve, and uncovering how it influences and shapes inflation. The Federal Reserve, often called the Fed, is the central bank of the United States. It was created in 1913 after a series of financial panics exposed how unstable the U.S. banking system really was. The Fed was created with the goal of providing the country with a safer, more flexible, and more stable monetary and financial system. But the Fed's role has evolved and shifted over time, and today it's one of the most influential institutions on Earth. Let's go back to the early 1900s. The U.S. economy was booming, but it was incredibly vulnerable. Banks could fail overnight. Panic would ripple through markets. In 1907, a major financial crisis nearly crashed the entire system. This chaos led to the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. President Woodrow Wilson signed it into law, creating a central bank with the power to stabilize the economy. In 1971, the dollar's departure from the gold standard marked a clear change. Overnight, the once mighty dollar essentially became fiat currency, meaning its value exists solely because the government says so. It has no intrinsic value. And if you've studied history at all, you know that fiat currency always fails. The gold standard played an important part in limiting the Federal Reserve's role. With the gold standard no more, the Fed gained significant freedom in expanding the monetary supply. But here's the thing. The Fed is not part of the government in the traditional sense. It was created to act as an independent entity made up of 12 regional banks, overseen by the Board of Governors in Washington, D.C. So, what exactly does the Fed do? It has three main responsibilities. Monetary policy, supervising banks, stabilizing financial systems. But the most important and the one we're focusing on is monetary policy. This means the Fed directly controls the money supply and interest rates, and these two levers are what drive or control inflation. Inflation happens when prices rise, usually because there's too much money chasing too few goods. And the Fed can fuel or fight this. When the Fed wants to stimulate the economy, say during a recession, it does things like lowering interest rates, so borrowing is cheaper. Buying government bonds, which injects cash into banks. Quantitative easing, basically creating money to buy assets. All of these increase the money supply. And while an increased money supply can boost growth, it has a nasty consequence: inflation. Take 2020, for example. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Fed slashed interest rates to zero and injected trillions of dollars into the economy. The Fed calls it balance sheet expansion. The rest of us call it printing money out of thin air. Between 2020 and 2022, they conjured $5 trillion new dollars, more than the entire pre-1971 money supply. And this helped avoid a crash, but also helped spark the highest inflation in 40 years. This one decision sent shockwaves into the economy that we're still seeing today. Of course, this is an extreme example, but it does show how the Federal Reserve, again, which was initially created to stabilize the economy, can actually create disastrous effects. In cases like this, when inflation inevitably gets too high, the Fed hits the brakes. They do this in a few ways, including raising interest rates, making borrowing more expensive, selling bonds, pulling money out of the system, and shrinking their balance sheet, reducing liquidity. So as you can see, the Federal Reserve plays a critical role in influencing the economy for better or for worse. Many Americans think that inflation is as simple as prices rising, but it's actually something more sinister than that. Inflation is your money getting weaker and weaker. Inflation erodes your purchasing power, and this is a serious threat with widespread implications. Here's why. Every new digital dollar created by the Fed dilutes the ones already in your wallet, savings account, or retirement plan. And politicians adore this trick. No messy tax hike, just a quieter skim off your savings. That's why former U.S. Representative Ron Paul famously called inflation a hidden tax on Americans. The Bank for International Settlements crunched the numbers. Every 10% bump in the money supply trims about 6% from the dollar's buying power within 2 years. That's why your grocery bill climbs even when the nightly news is reaffirming that everything is fine and inflation is under control. What's worse is this money printing has fueled most of the government spending over the last few years, doubling down on making inflation much worse for everyday Americans. A piece by the economists at the Heritage Foundation aptly claimed, "The American dream cannot coexist alongside a government with the ability to weaponize inflation against its own people." And it's true. Prolonged inflation over the last several years has caused a lot of harm, resulting in hardworking Americans having to delay retirement, being locked into homes that no longer meet their families' needs, sinking into expensive credit card debt, and emptying their savings accounts. And the sad truth is, we're largely powerless when it comes to the actions of the Federal Reserve, as well as the government's bad spending habit. And what's maddening is that the Fed knows it. The Federal Reserve's most recent report, Economic Well-Being of U.S. Households, showed that inflation and prices remain the top concerns for the American people. Is it any wonder that over 5 years of persistent inflation are taking a toll on Americans' wallets and well-being? The Fed also said that for 3 straight years, more Americans said their expenses increased than those who saw their income rise. Additionally, Bankrate's new Financial Freedom Survey found that 77% of U.S. adults said they aren't financially secure. This percentage has risen gradually over the past few years, up from 72% in 2023 and 75% in 2024. What's behind this increasing phenomenon of Americans feeling less financially secure with each passing year? Bankrate says there's one simple answer. Inflation has eroded purchasing power, making it harder for people to afford the same things they used to. They pointed out that thanks to inflation, a $100,000 salary in January 2020 has an equal purchasing power as a $124,353 salary today. Meaning if you haven't had a raise or increase in income since the pandemic, inflation has essentially eaten up $24,000 of your salary. Do you see now how inflation chips away at your hard-earned dollars? The same survey also found that 1 in 4 people say they need to make $150,000 or more per year to be financially secure. This 6-figure number is more than double today's average salary of $81,515. When you look at the full picture, it is beyond clear that the U.S. government and the Federal Reserve are not interested in making decisions that benefit the American people. You can see how the Fed's actions have sent shockwaves into the economy and how its role and responsibilities have expanded way beyond the original intent. Today, the Fed has far more power and influence than originally planned, resulting in major economic instability and inflation. Sadly, we can't vote the Fed out or stop the money printing, but once you understand the Federal Reserve's role in driving inflation, you can begin to take control of your financial future and take steps to protect yourself and your family from the effects of their reckless actions. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to this, but you can start by paying down expensive debt, making sure you're not saving in low-interest accounts, investing in inflation-proof assets like precious metals and real estate, and diversifying away from the ever-declining US dollar. And so the next time someone says inflation is complicated, remember that's only true when you're trying to hide the simple fact. The Federal Reserve has clear intentions of expanding the money supply forever. And forever is an awfully long time to chip away at your savings and devalue your salary. As always, I look forward to hearing your thoughts on this topic in the comments section below. And while you're here, be sure to check the description box for some of my favorite resources for creating financial freedom, like my free PDF, the Freedom Cheat Sheet. If you like this topic, I know that the Freedom Cheat Sheet is going to resonate with you. It's the exact blueprint you can use to build financial freedom, regardless of what's happening in the economy or with broken entities like the Federal Reserve. And for more videos like this, be sure to subscribe to the channel. We'll see you in the next video.